And what I hope to share with you is it's basically I was kind of estimating. I think I spent probably about 4,000 to 5,000 hours thinking about and working on this topic that we're going to be talking about today. So it's been kind of not only a labor of love, but it had such a profound impact on my ability to provide for my family, to take care of and create value for other people, that we want to really share this with you. And this really is at a higher level than using Fix Your Funnel or Infusionsoft. Those are more of when the rubber hits the road, and that will come into play in what we're going to talk about today. But more than that, we're at a higher level.
What's that's the strategy. This is above even the tactics or the strategies used within automation. This is where do you start before you even get into automation? And most people skip this step. That's what makes it hard for the business to skip the step.
So this phrase we're going to start with is kind of the foundational cornerstone of the whole philosophy that we use for making decisions. And I think why this was so revolutionary for people is, at least the word that I heard over and over again after we took feedback from people after the event, was this concept of clarity. Knowing exactly where they should be focusing in the business. And too frequently what we've witnessed is people automate the wrong thing, and then they get frustrated because they don't get any benefits out of the work that they did to automate. And automating can be a total bear, especially at first, right? Technology can bring benefit if and only if it reduces a limitation. And those two words, can and reduce, are the main things we want to focus on first, because this phrase says that it can bring benefit. It doesn't say it will bring benefit. And the reason it says can is because it's conditional. And the condition is if and only if, which means it must have the next condition that we're going to state. It's not an optional condition. It is a mandatory condition. And the mandatory condition is if it reduces a limitation. So a technology sometimes doesn't reduce any limitation. There's no limitation that exists that's being reduced. And so we don't get any benefit. The can is conditional, and we'll explain why in just one second as I show you this illustration. But I want you to really capture that. If you have screen capture, you can do that. If you have a pen and paper, you can write that phrase down. That's going to be a key phrase, and we'll state it again. But technology can bring benefit if and only if it reduces limitation. If you get this concept, I guarantee you're going to be way more effective in everything else you're doing in your business, because it'll prevent you from doing stupid stuff. Wasting time, wasting money, and wasting effort. You'll always be focused in like a laser on the most important thing. Okay. So here's just to illustrate this concept so it becomes very clear. We've got an anthill, and over there on the right side, we have the classic oatmeal cream sandwich, or what is it? Oatmeal cream pie? What do they call that? Okay. So we got the cup of Dr. Pepper. It's in between the cookie and the ants, right? The ants don't give up. They go around the cookie. This is true for all of us in our businesses. We figured out a way to get around the cup of Dr. Pepper and get to the cookie. Okay?
I think they'll actually go for the Dr. Pepper, though. But anyway, keep going.
You're not aware that the Dr. Pepper's there.
Okay.
So now, let's say we bring in some technology, and with that technology, we're able to pick up and remove the cup of Dr. Pepper that is in the path. Do we get a benefit? The answer is actually
limitation, right?
Yeah, we removed the thing that was in the way, the limitation. We removed it, but we haven't changed the path of the ants yet. So there's no benefit here. And this is why we want to illustrate, technology can bring benefit if and only if it removes the limitation. So the can is because we may have removed the limitation, but if we don't change the rules to accommodate and take advantage of the new technology, then we don't get any change. A case in point for this is we set up somebody on a system where they would use, the dialer to be able to make calls. And this would reduce the amount of time they're on calls. It would also keep track of what's going on, and then also allow one-click automation to happen. And then the person went to making calls off their cell phone for no real reason, just because they didn't want to change the way they've been doing things before. So did they get any benefit from the new technology? And the answer is no, because they didn't change the rules to actually use it. So we get the ants to change the rules. Now they get a benefit. So we remove the limitation, we reduce the limitation, and then now the technology has a chance to make a difference. And we are making the most of it, so awesome. But are there cases where we have technologies that don't reduce the limitation and therefore can't bring any benefit? Well, what if we took these ants and we gave them this new technology called pavement instead of dirt, brought them up to the 21st century, and now they're walking on pavement? Is there really any reduction of a limitation for them? And the answer is no. So is there any benefit to them? And the answer is no. So you have to make sure that whatever technology you're introducing into your business, into your marketing, your sales, or other processes in your business, that technology actually reduces a limitation that is impeding your ability to make money, because that's the point of a business, is to actually produce profit for the owners of the business. So before you introduce a new technology, do you know what the limitation is? And when it comes to automation, we say it this way. Before you automate, do you know what the limitation is that your automation will reduce? And so this is an analysis we always do before we do anything. So, we can have a million great ideas, but if they don't pass this test, they don't get done. So the kind of the crux of this whole thing is identifying what's a limitation. Now, sometimes we'll talk to people before they get this full concept, and we'll say, okay, so what's the limitation of your business? And they'll come back to us and say, well, I have 5 limitations. That's impossible. You can only have one limitation. So you have to have a methodology for discovering what is the limitation in your business.
Explain that right. You can have 5 areas in your business that are not working very well, but there's only one true limitation at a time.
Yeah, and we're gonna actually illustrate very clearly how that works, because this is most commonly we see this happen where people start to try and fix the problems in the business, but what they're really doing is they're fixing the effects, not the cause. And so what they actually do is create new problems. They may solve the old problem, but they create new problems because they haven't really addressed the core limitation, the thing that's actually controlling the flow of profit through that business. And so, this is good news. That's bad news, right? It's bad news because if you don't know how to do this, there's latent opportunity sitting in your business right now. You've been building it up, not knowing that you were doing that, because you don't know how to identify the limitation and then remove that limitation. That's the good news. The bad news is it's happening. Or did I say bad news first? The good news is it's there and you can just harvest it. This is where we frequently get ways to create easy revenue bumps for companies, is just by finding the limitation and then unlocking it. So we're going to go through 4 keys to discovering your current limitation in your business. And you can do this process over and over again, which is the cool part. And we love giving this information to you guys because it will truly unlock profit that's stuck in your business right now. Now, before I go forward and start introducing you to these 4 keys, you have to understand these are like facts that you have to be able to fully adopt and accept. And if you can't fully adopt or accept them, if you have reservations about them, then you won't get the benefit that we're going to talk about. This is sort of a technology, so to speak. And so in order for you to get the benefit out of this technology, you actually have to buy into it fully. So if you guys have any questions or concerns about what I'm going to be talking about, we're on Facebook Live. Comment below the video. We got Todd sitting behind Trent monitoring those comments, and he'll be yelling over to Trent if there's something that we need to address. So if you have any questions or comments or you're concerned about what we're going to say, you really need to bring them up for us to be able to make sure that we can address them for you, because these are like critical. If you don't agree with me 100% on these things, then you will not get the benefit out of what we're going to talk about. Okay. So, number 1, reality is inherently simple and in harmony with itself. Now, I'm attributing this to Sir Isaac Newton. This is a little bit different than his original quote. He said nature is inherently simple and in harmony with itself. We substituted reality because we feel like it's a more full representation of it. I think in his mind that was what he meant. But let's look at what this statement says. And you tell me if you can agree with this. Reality is inherently simple and in harmony with itself. Now, the reason that this is so important is if you don't believe that reality is simple, then you believe that it must be complex. And if it's complex, frequently that means the answers to problems that you're facing in reality are beyond your ability to comprehend or solve on your own, which means you're going to have to go out and find somebody else to fix it for you. And they may also claim it's too complex. And as a result, they may say you can't fix it. And whenever that happens, then we run into a problem because now we can't make any progress. And the good news is this is a true statement, and I'm going to prove it to you. It may require that we see the words complex and simple, maybe a little bit different than we assume it means. And here's a case in point. I've got 2 boxes here. In box A, I've got 4 yellow dots that represent a system. so like a business or whatever, right? And these 4 yellow dots are not connected at all, as you can see. Then over here on box B, we have multiple dots, lots of arrows showing cause and effect relationships, and even some dependencies on some things that have to happen at the same time. And so we got a more involved diagram of a process or system in box B. And the question is, and if you're on here watching, then that means you can go ahead and comment. I want to ask you, which of these is more complex, A or B? Now, when you look at these, initially you could think, okay, B looks more complex. And the reason that we would say B looks more complex is because in order to describe what is represented in box B would take a lot more words, right? It would take a lot more to describe what's going on there. And inherently, we would say that's more complex. And A is simpler in terms of the layout of those elements. It would be easier to describe that in a series of words. But when we talk about simple and complex in relationship to this first fact that we have to get you to accept and believe, we're not talking about how you would describe it, but how you could control it. And the difference between these two is in box A, there are 4 degrees of freedom. And that means we have to manipulate 4 different things in order to affect the entire system. In box B, there's only one thing or 1 degree of freedom in order to affect the whole system. If we touch on one, we impact every other element in that diagram. On the other hand, with A, we have to touch all 4 in order to manipulate the entire system. So frequently when people see things in life, they look and they see A. And they think, once they understand what we're talking about in terms of complex and simple, they think A is an actual representation of reality, and it's therefore complex. I got to control 4 different plates in order to keep this thing going. Or I got to control 4 different areas in order to keep this thing going. And so as a result, our natural assumption is that reality is in fact complex and not simple. But the reality is that these things that we see around us that need addressing, that are problems, frequently are what we call symptoms of the cause, right? Which is also, interestingly enough, where we're going to find the actual limitation in our business. So if you focus on symptoms instead of the actual core cause or limitation, then when you try and adjust those and fix those, you really just move them around. You don't actually ever eliminate them. And so that's why we want you to be able to determine the limitation, because when you can affect the limitation, then you can create awesome results throughout the whole system instead of just adjusting these outside points and really not making any big difference. And if you've ever had a situation where you've gone through and done something in your business and then the results really didn't match up with what you expected, it's probably because you were working on symptoms instead of the actual core cause. Before we go forward, Trent, I kind of want to explain, give an example of this, right? Because before we had Fix Your Funnel, Trent, we had our real estate training business, right? Mm-hmm. And in order for us to be authentic in that business, Trent also maintained and ran a real estate business, and I kind of focused more on doing the marketing and running the training business in terms of logistics. And the reason that we did this is so that we would have a laboratory to work with. And Trent started to know some things that he was frustrated about. And as we started to think about this concept that we're sharing with you today more, this was what, 5-6 years ago?
Probably 2009, yes, 7 years ago.
Trent started, so we said, let's do it. Let's try and apply this process to this real estate business and see if we can't, discover what is the limitation that is causing all these negative effects that you see. So Trent, what were some of the things? It was like delayed closings because
people would question what I was telling them to do, even though I'd closed hundreds of transactions that were short sales. I knew exactly what I was doing. They would listen to their friend or their neighbor and they start to question what I was telling them needed to happen and how it would happen. So they wouldn't actually believe that the person they hired actually knew what they were doing. So it got frustrating because I had thousands of real estate agents across the United States that paid us money to learn from me, and yet my own customers would question me. So that was
people weren't doing what you said, which also resulted in they didn't turn in paperwork when you needed it, and so there would be delayed closings or failed closings occasionally. Also, there was some stuff that happened with your assistant that wasn't. I remember that wasn't desirable that was happening. where she wasn't able to get stuff that she needed in a time frame. And so originally when we looked at it on the surface, we started coming up with solutions for all these different things that we didn't like, right?
Yeah.
And then we said, hey, wait, let's go see if we can figure out what the core cause is of all these things.
And that's a natural tendency people have, right? They look at the symptom, they try and treat the symptom. When people have aches and pains in their body, they get a medicine for the aches and pains in the body versus finding out what's the core cause of this. So what we did typically in our business was we found a problem, we try and fix something in the problem that we saw, the symptom we saw, without taking a step back and saying, is that really the cause of this symptom?
So we're not going to go through the process yet because I want to take you guys step by step through what we did with Trent's business and then this concept so you can kind of see side by side what those are. But what's critical to know at this juncture is that there is a core limitation, a core cause that we have to try and drill down to, because if we address that, then we get like awesome results. We don't just get slightly better or marginally better results. And this is where a lot of people spend their time. They spend their time on, hey, maybe I should adjust the color on the button. Maybe I should try a different headline on the squeeze page. Maybe a different subject line on this email. And those things, what they'll do is they'll give you incremental improvements. But if you want like major improvements, you actually have to look at the business as a whole entity. And you have to determine what is the limiting factor that's occurring in this business at this point in time. So this is much higher level than, which tool am I using for delivering the message? What's the actual message looking like? What's my offer? Am I doing payments? Am I doing this pricing? All those other things, they're all important, but they really are like a distant second to figuring out the core limitation in the business. And so that's why this was so critical. Now, this concept that nature or reality is simple, inherently simple, is actually reflected in nature as well. And the cool part is about the second part of this phrase, which is in harmony with itself, which means frequently when we have a problem, the solution is not far away. And this is true in nature. So if you've ever run into poison ivy, you remember it because it was a painful experience. Now, if you would have known about this next part, you would have taken care of it very quickly, because wherever poison ivy grows, frequently within a few feet, there's some jewelweed, or touch me not as it's called. And this is actually an antidote to poison ivy. And so there's this trend in nature where you have a toxin, and in relative near proximity to that toxin, there is an antidote to it growing in that same area. In fact, this is an interesting article I found as well, where in Mexico and different parts of Central America, there's all these different trees that produce these toxins that they kind of excrete out of their bark. And then right next to them is another tree that has the antidote. And so this is kind of this harmony part that we see that Isaac Newton was pointing out, is that where there's a problem, in close proximity, there's also a solution. We're going to be showing how that's actually true. So this concept of reality is simple and in harmony with itself is especially easy to see in businesses once you know how to look for it. Okay, that's concept number one. Concept number two is there are no conflicts in reality. This is again from Dr. Goldratt. You can read all of his books and then you can learn all this stuff on your own, or you can just let me walk you through it. But there are no conflicts in reality. Now, anybody that's ever been in a relationship is thinking right now, yeah, right. Because in reality, with people that we care about frequently, there are conflicts. And so if somebody says in reality there are no conflicts, we kind of doubt that. But here's what I mean by that. Let's say that we had this big block and we asked two people to use two different methods to measure the height or length of that block. And one person came up with 3 feet and another person came up with 4 feet. Would we just say, what the heck, it's 3.5 feet? And the answer is no, we would never do that. We would say, how did you arrive at this measurement of 3 feet? What was the process? What are the assumptions that you followed in order to get to that solution of 3 feet? And then we'd ask the person who did the same process for 4 feet, what were the underlying assumptions that you went through? In other words, we question the underlying assumptions that create the appearance of a conflict. And so much to the point that we would never, anybody that's into measuring physical things, right, they would never just assume, well, we couldn't find the same answer with our two different solutions, so we'll just compromise and say 3.5. And the reason why is because we know that there is no such thing as a compromised length or height in the physical world, right? That there is one distance for it, and we would question the method before we would question the fact that there is one distance. We recognize that in reality there are no conflicts. And this is what we're talking about in business as well. See, a compromise is a lowering of expectations. And think about that in your experience. If you've had a situation in your business that you're trying to resolve and it appears to have this conflict, you don't just say, well, I guess we can't do it, and then not lower your expectations at the same time. You have to lower your expectations to compromise. And so this is where this is such a big deal. Because when we compromise, it's because we are focusing on the effects instead of the cause. We've got to get our focus on the cause to really get to a place where we can resolve conflicts. Okay, so here's the conflict that we had with Trent. Trent is an expert in his field. People pay thousands of dollars to have, and they'll wait on the phone for like 2 to 3 hours just to get a chance to ask their question of Trent that are in the real estate industry. Yet Trent's own clients don't respect his opinion, don't respect his expertise. So there's this conflict that appears, right? It doesn't seem to match up. So there's some sort of underlying assumption that's going on here. And we could just say, oh, well, that's the way it is, which is what we frequently do in business when we see these conflicts. We just accept them as facts of life. Instead, we got to go deeper and then ask the questions. And that's going to be phase 4. But first, I need you to accept the fact that there really are no conflicts. There's appearance of conflicts based on bad assumptions on one side or the other of the conflict. And we just don't know which side that is. So we got to question both of them to see what are the underlying assumptions that we've made that cause us to think that this is an impasse that can never be broken. Okay. So if you guys can believe that, then we're halfway there. Okay. So this brings us to point number 3, which is blame gives away all power to create a true solution. Now, Goldratt didn't say that exactly, so I don't want to put words exactly in his mouth, but this is kind of paraphrasing what he said. And if you think about this one, this is really critical too. As soon as we blame somebody, there's a mental door in our heads that close. Here's a little group of people in a meeting. We got 4 people expressing some thoughts about why we're in the current situation we are. There's some things they don't like that are going on, even though they seem pretty happy. Guy number 1 says the blue shirt man has been making his calls. It's his fault. At that point, he shuts his brain off to look for solutions. Okay, you see how that works? If as soon as you assign blame to anybody or anything, we shut our brains off. So the next guy, he's here saying customer support keeps screwing up. That's why we're not keeping customers or whatever. Okay, so it may be a fact that customer support is not working right. But that's different from saying customer support isn't working and that's the problem. That's actually not the problem. That's an effect of the problem, right? And so as soon as he signs blame there, then it's gone. Here's another one. The new software is confusing, right? How many times have you heard people refer to Infusionsoft as Confusionsoft? Biggest mistake people can make, because as soon as they do that, they've shut their brain off to actually understanding how Infusionsoft can work for them in a productive way. Just easy to blame instead of think. And then this time of year, people don't buy. How many of you guys have ever run into that one, right? Where you're like, hey, people don't buy at this time of year. They don't like this thing. We state these opinions, which are really, we would never want to admit that they're blaming, but that's what they are. They're opinions disguised as fact that we use to blame and then thus give away all of our power to create a true solution. So it's really critical you don't blame anybody when you're trying to identify these core limitations in a business. So here's the 3 again. Reality is inherently simple and in harmony with itself. There are no conflicts in reality, and blame gives away all power to create a true solution. Okay? So if you guys can buy into those 3, then we're like 90% of the way there. The rest is relatively easy after that. So reality is simple. There are no conflicts. Blame gives away power. Okay, remember those 3 concepts. We're going to use those over and over again through the final step, which is this last process. But this is the actual process that we use to actually get to the core in any business. And what you'll find is once you get good at it, This goes really, really quick. You got to check it, which we're going to talk about, but it goes really quick. So step number one is we got to identify the root cause. Okay, what is the thing that's creating all the undesirable effects that we're seeing in the business, the things that we don't like that are going on? Second, we got to identify the underlying assumption that is creating this, because every limitation is based on a conflict that's been usually disguised as a fact of life, right? So this is why you'll see when somebody comes into a business with fresh eyes, they frequently can see things that the people that work in it every day can't. And this is, if we go back to the ants, this is much like the ants. The ants, when they first came in contact with that cup of Dr. Pepper, didn't see it as an obstacle that could be removed. They saw it as a fact of life. It would be like you running into a mountain. You just see it and you go, well, that's the mountain. The mountain's there. We got to go around it, through it, or over it. You don't think that it could actually be removed. And so that's how most of us are in our businesses. We run into some sort of conflict of ideas. Conflict isn't like always arguing or battling that way. It can just be two ideas that seem to be at an impasse that can never be resolved. And so those can also be at the center of the root cause, and frequently is. We got to identify what are the underlying assumptions that are creating this conflict that causes us to assume that things have to be the way that they are. And we're going to replace that underlying assumption. So when we do that, what that means is that we're going to change what used to be the root cause. And if we do it right, then we'll see that, and we'll be able to kind of mentally visualize how that's going to have an impact, because it's just cause and effect relationships. If we do this, what do we expect will happen? And then we start to analyze what are the possible outcomes that will come as a result of this change to the root cause of the limitation in our business. And as soon as we do that, then we'll experiment. We'll see mentally, what is the effect or the effects of this new assumption. And then we look at those, and if we like the new effects that we expect out of this based on our experience in our business, then we'll keep it. But if we don't, then we go back to the drawing board and we look at the underlying assumption. We see if there's another something that we missed. Is there an underlying assumption that needs to be adjusted further? Okay, so let's go back to our example, because we just went really theoretical for a while, probably lost a few people, because this isn't maybe afternoon thinking unless you had your 5-hour energy or something, right? So what did we do with your business? We had all these things that we knew that were the undesirable effects. How did we get down to the root cause?
What we identified as the root cause was that my customers didn't see me the same way as the real estate agents did. The real estate agents saw me as an authority figure on the topic of short sales. And so we identified that because my customers...
Talk real quick. How did we get to that point, though? How did we get to that?
We kept asking them the question, so why is it that they're not following your instructions? Why is it that they're doing things their way or their friend's way? Or why are they not responding when you ask them for things? And then we identified, okay, well, they're not doing it because they feel like they know better. Why do they feel like they know better? Well, they feel like they have other sources that are better, advising them better on what have their best interest in mind, understand the process better. Why do they believe that? So it just came down to, we kept asking the question why. It came back to them just not knowing how much I knew about this process and how many times I've done it. I was not selling myself as the authority. I was just assuming that they would know that.
And this is where the do not blame comes in, right? Trent could have said, well, my customers are idiots because they don't understand how awesome I am, right?
That's probably true, but...
Well, and at that point, he cut off all power for him to think deeper than that. He would have just said, I just need to get different customers.
Yeah.
It's the customer's fault. You need new customers.
Too soon. And that's what I did initially is I think, well, I just need to focus on a different clientele that's, higher end price point. Maybe that'll fix it. So I tried to look for a solution in the problem immediately instead of staying in curiosity and trying to figure out, well, why is that? Why is that? And again, Ryan said, as soon as we either associate blame or we identify something as we consider to be the problem, then it's hard for us to find the true limitation, the true problem, and therefore it's hard to find the true solution.
So we used that for there was one problem we didn't like, which is they didn't do what we wanted. There was another problem that was seen as totally isolated, which is closings aren't happening on time. And so we did again this cause and effect. Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Why is that? I think somebody at our event pointed out that the Japanese are known for the 5 whys or 6 whys or something like that. But they'll ask why like 6 times to try and get down to the core. Well, the thing is you've got these 4 or 5 different things you don't like that are going on in the business that may seem totally unrelated. What we're looking for is to see those all converge into the same mutual cause, right? And that's how we know we're at the root cause, when we can see a cause and effect relationship that is leading to all of the things that we don't like that we're seeing going on in the business, things that we know are contributing to a reduction in profit overall for the business. So that's an important part, is we need to take each of those things as deep as we can take them, but we need to ask the cause and effect without stretching to try and make it fit. We got to see if we get to the same conclusion coming from these various veins of problems that we're seeing in the business. And it will know that we're on the right track if they all come to a head. And that's where it gets a little bit, you got to be aware of if you're leading it or if you're actually following it. But that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to find that single thing, because this goes back to point number 1, which is nature or reality is inherently simple, meaning things have a tendency to come to one place. And we see this in other places. I won't go into those because it'll be probably more confusing. But anyways, that really happens every time. And we've seen this trend. How many businesses have we put through this process, businesses that we personally have had some impact on. And you see that over and over again. It always comes back to one thing, even though it has multiple effects out there. And that's how you know you're getting to the right problem. So we figured out that there was this conflict. The conflict was some people see Trent as an expert and other people don't. Unfortunately, the people that don't are the people that are supposed to be, need it the most. So then we said, okay, what would make it, and this is the important part, when we were replacing, so the underlying assumptions that we had on each of those is, they assume that somebody else has their best interest more than Trent has their best interest in mind.
Or right? That they know better.
Or that they know better. So that was kind of the underlying assumption. And then we looked at these other ones, and then we said, okay, well, what could address these to bring these into harmony with each other so that we didn't have a conflict anymore? And so in that process, we determined that we needed to find a way that would represent Trent appropriately as the expert he was in the minds of his prospects. And so we did not look on the shelf of tools or technologies or things that we had on the shelf to find a solution. We actually asked the question of what would actually solve this problem. And so that's the next important part, is not to make the mistake of trying to solve a problem with what you already know. Look for the actual solution that will correctly address the core problem that you found. So in our case, we know that we needed to make Trent look like an expert in the minds of the prospects immediately, so that there would be no question that he was an authority on the topic. So what we determined would be probably the most effective thing to do that was to make him an actual authority by making him an author. So we said, you need to have a book. Now, had we ever written a book at that point, Trent?
No, that was our first one.
That was our first one. And because we had gone through this whole process, we took it and we applied it to that process of actually creating a book. And so we went through that process. Then in 2 weeks, we had a book for Trent. And then we had this situation now that we could actually address the problem. And did it address the problem, Trent, all the core effects that you...
Yeah, because the way we wrote the book, we asked the question, like, what was the outcome we were hoping for? And that was that they would see that, 1, I had their best interest in mind, and 2, I knew exactly what I was doing. So we wrote the book to that point. And when I started giving out the book to people before I met with them, when I would meet with them, some of them would have read it, some didn't read it, but just the fact they got the book, it changed their perspective and their mind about who I was and what my experience and expertise was, because no one else they were talking to had written a book on the topic of avoiding foreclosure and saving yourself from, the liability and the downsides from it. So I stood out immediately just from that one thing that we did differently, and it affected everything else in the business. I never had people question me after that as far as, are you sure this is what we should be doing? Or hesitating to send in their paperwork. When I told them what we needed and why we needed it, they didn't question it. They would now comply. So compliance went up, and customers were happier because they felt more secure that who they were working with truly was the best person to help them out.
So at that point, we were hooked on this process because we had seen such a dramatic shift in outcome, right? Because of that. And before we went and did it, we thought, okay, if we did do this, what should we expect as the outcome? So do we know for sure, Trent, that was going to work?
No, it was just a best guess.
But we had enough experience in that industry to have a pretty good idea. And the same is going to be true for you. You got enough experience in what you do. You've been doing it for any period of time that you're going to be able to kind of formulate through imagination is what are going to be the potential effects of this new assumption, this new solution that we're putting in place. And that's the critical part. You got to think through that, because if what you think through doesn't add up, then that means you didn't get the right solution. So go back and try and find the solution without neutering it by taking into account all the things that you do know. Sometimes what we do is we come up with a shopping list of all the things we need to create the ideal solution. And then we shop around to find those things instead of the other way around, which frequently what happens is somebody sells you something, you get excited about it, you buy it, then you go do it. And then you don't get any results from it because it wasn't the thing that your business actually needed in the first place. It personally drives me nuts to see people being taken advantage of, and I don't think people are doing it to harm you, but because you're not aware that what you're falling for, so to speak, is going to take you away from the thing that actually will make a difference in your business. Then, nobody wittingly is doing this or willingly is doing this, but you end up getting harmed in the process. And that's the part that drives me crazy. And that's why we wanted to put these tools in your hands. The final point that you need to know here is that you must never assume that you know everything about your business. Because as soon as you assume that you know everything about your business, you're just like these ants walking around the Dr. Pepper. They assume that thing just can't change, and so they'll never do anything to move it out of the way. They'll never be able to then effectively get any reduction. They will never reduce the limitation that's in their business, and so they'll never get the benefits, right? So that's why this is all critical. If you guys can take those concepts, this is the foundational part. That's the second part that we taught. We're not going to teach today because we've already gone 34 minutes as far as I guess longer than that. But the reason why is because it's a separate topic. Maybe we'll do another one next week or something. If you would like us to notify you, then you can let us know. We won't be doing another notification the same way. This time we did because I just really wanted you guys to get aware of this and know about this, because it has made such a profound impact on the way that we approach our business. When Trent and I meet together frequently, we're always asking ourselves, are we on the limitation? So is this really the thing that's going to move the dial the most, because we're on the limitation? And we run through that process. And as you do it, it gets easier and easier. And that's something that, because of the event that we had in Huntington Beach, and it was so successful, everybody in that room was so excited of what they were able to accomplish in just, in fact, in just 2 days, right? The third day was almost like a bonus, because in 2 days they had made so much progress on their business. Was there anybody that didn't say they felt like they'd gotten 3 months or a year's worth of work done in just 2 days?
Everyone I talked to, just one of it that was a format of it was impactful in the way that they were able to sit with an expert on topics that they were needing help on in their business after they spent the first day identifying what was the true limitation of the business. So they all figured that based on the format and how we did it and how we structured it, in just that 2-day period, they got more advancement, clarity, and strategy figured out than they had the previous year or two, simply because before they didn't know where to work, they're just scrambling to try and fix problems instead of identifying where is the opportunity hidden in my business? Where is this core limitation that I have not addressed?
What we did is we taught them what we just taught you guys. That was the first thing that we did. And then we split them into 2 groups of 5. So, we could give more focused attention. Trent took one group, I took another. And then we did kind of went around the table, not in the mastermind side, because how masterminds go typically is everybody in the group is, telling you what you need to fix in your business after you present, here's my big problem. What do you guys think? The problem with that is you don't have this format, you don't really understand what is the thing you need to fix. So I don't know about you, but every mastermind I've ever been in, everyone, it doesn't matter what the caliber of the people were in the room, they had no clue what the limitation was because they had no format for discovering that. So, I would just mention maybe one of my undesirable effects, one of the things going on in the business that I didn't like that I needed to have fixed. And then they gave you 30 ways that you could fix that. And you leave with a bunch of great ideas, and then you went back and then, maybe you implemented some of them, and maybe you got like an incremental result, but you certainly didn't get an exponential result. And then you said, oh, okay, well, that was fun, at least hanging out with those people and everything. But that was it. So we didn't do a mastermind. What we did is we had each person go around the room, and before you come to claim your life back, or as we call it now, 2 days to fix your funnel, you've got to go and get all your numbers and all your data. We kind of tell you how to get all that information so you can make a proper evaluation of where the business is, so we can start identifying some of the undesirable effects. And then, of course, your opinion matters a lot on that. And they would present, okay, so here's where my business is. Here's what we don't like about it. And then I would walk them through this process that we just taught you guys today. And then at the end of that, I was also not just walking them through it, but then I was explaining to the group, hey, here's why I asked that. Here's why we did that. And we went through that process once with each company. And so as we went through each company was totally different. And so they got to see how that process was applied to 5 different businesses, and besides their own. Or 4 besides their own. And so through that, they got to really get a grasp for how do they apply this in real life, because this is fairly theoretical. I know we did give you one example, but that's what we did in the event. Now, once they had that, then we nailed down where they needed to focus. And so that was like, okay, now go do this, this, and this. And they had a game plan for hitting that. And then in the afternoons, that's what we did. The cool part, like Trent was mentioning, is we had like Justin Lofton, who's an expert, like a total expert on Facebook marketing. He's sitting around the room just waiting to talk to people who need that as part of their limitation. They need to address traffic or something like that. Then we had Tyler Garnes up in Utah. We're going to have Ross Walker there. And so a couple real experts on just Infusionsoft automation in general. Then we had Jared Morris from Graphly, who is just a whiz at finding those numbers that you need to be able to tell you the story of what's going on in your business. So for some of them, we didn't have all those numbers quite figured out. They needed to go sit down with Jared, and Jared helped them figure out which charts they needed in Graphly to be able to see what the business was trying to tell them was going on. And then there was, of course, Trent, who's expert at sales processes, and Todd from our team, who's expert at all of our fix your funnel tools, and then myself, who I'm probably pretty useless, but we were all there. And so what happened is in the afternoon they could sit with the various experts that we had available to them to address their specific solution, because they knew exactly where they needed to focus. And so at the end of day 1, when they came back in day 2, they were all super excited. It was interesting to watch everybody go through the process, because by the end of day 2, they were like, I've never had so much clarity and certainty that I'm working in the right area of my business. And I don't know, maybe you already have certainty. I hope you do, because that's one of the big challenges for entrepreneurs is like, am I really working on the most important thing? Because there's nobody to tell you what to do, right? If you're an employee, you get somebody telling you what to do. You don't have to think about what should I be doing for the most part. But when you are the owner of the business, there's nobody telling you what to do. So the only person that can really tell you is your business. And so this framework allows you to listen essentially to the business and then respond to what it's telling you. Because your business wants to grow. It wants to be as big as it possibly can be, as profitable as it can possibly be. But in order for that to happen, you have to listen to the clues it's giving you. And that's essentially what this framework does, is it gives you that ability to do that. So anyways, we decided, because it was so successful and people got such great results, all of them paid 4 figures to attend. And they were all like, they said, Ryan, this is by far the best event I've ever attended in my entire life. And that was pretty humbling for Trent and I to hear. It was what we were hoping for, but it was humbling at the same time. Now, we don't do implementation work. It's not like we're in there building campaigns for you or anything like that. We're actually just guiding you. But we've got these great experts sitting around there to do that, to guide you through that process. And everybody just said it was phenomenal. So we decided, let's do it every month. We can offer it as something that can help people that are trying to get going with Infusionsoft or Fix Your Funnel to get real clear direction and know that where they're focusing is the right spot. But in addition to that, learn this process that served us so well. And this process, just understanding this process, allowed us to go into any business and find, great opportunities just sitting there because the business owner didn't have this framework to discover them. So it just shows you where money is in any business.
Here's what I heard, Ryan,
what's that?
Yeah, a couple of the attendees that they feel like they now don't need to rely on someone else to sell them a solution. They now understand how to identify what their limitation is, and then they can go look for the solution. So this is extremely powerful when you are in a situation where you're at a sales event. We've all been to those where you're getting sold left and right. Most of us, since we're entrepreneurs, we want to buy everything. We're typically buyers, and it gives us distractions, and it doesn't really help us to actually progress. So now everyone that was there was like, yeah, I feel like I'm clear now. I'm not going to get distracted on these other things. Now, some people will still get distracted. It's the nature of, we as humans. But a lot of them are going to go away now with that clarity on what they need to focus on. So these distractions aren't going to affect them. And that is a huge thing. I've noticed that in our own businesses. When we have that clarity, then the distractions don't show up, and we don't get stuck doing something that we should be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's metrics that we try and measure ourselves by, right? And they say, tell me how you're going to measure me, and I'll tell you how I'll act, right?
Yeah.
And this thought came down to, this is from Goldratt as well. I couldn't recommend Dr. Goldratt's stuff higher. If you bought all of his books and read them, not just read them, but studied them, read and reread, you couldn't go wrong. I'll just put it that way. But he said there's two measurements that you use for yourself. One is, what am I doing that I should not be doing? So what am I doing right now that I should not be doing? And what am I not doing that I should be doing? So what am I doing that I should not be doing? And what am I not doing that I should be doing? And he said, those are the two questions you ask yourself to keep yourself on track. Those are the two metrics, so to speak, that you want to try and do in terms of you as a business owner. And this framework that we shared with you today, for us, has been the key to really understanding how to answer those two questions in a totally objective way that can give total clarity and certainty that you're on the right track, or that you're on the wrong track and you need to get on the right track. And so for us personally, Trent and I did this evaluation while we were there ourselves, and we found a way to double our business over the next few months. And so that was exciting for us because we went and said, okay, what is the core limitation in our business right now? What is actually preventing our customers? Because for us, we're looking also, because you make money by value you bring to other people. So what value are we not bringing to our customers that we should or could be, was kind of our starting point, because we got a lot of things dialed in at this point in our business. And that's where we discovered a whole new way for us to bring value to the marketplace that will essentially double our revenues, while creating a heck of a lot more value for the people that will be helping us double our revenues. So we're super excited about these. We've got the next 3 months planned out, October, November, and December. But if you want to attend a month different than that, because you're booked those 3 months, by all means, you can text in that month name, but text the month that you're interested in attending to the number you see on the screen. Trent will put that in the comments just to make it easier for people. And, or Todd, it's 760-621-8194. And if you text the month to that, then you'll get a link that has information about the event, a little more detail, hopefully answering some questions. There's even a video from one of the attendees. We'll have some more videos put up shortly from the other attendees, so you can hear in their words what their experience was, because that's probably more important than anything we say. And then there'll also be a link for a kind of application process that you can go through if you'd like to, find out about attending. And the way that works is you can go through the application process, and then a member of our team will look at your answers and then determine if it would be a wise thing for you at this point, based on our criteria. And then if it is, set up an appointment for you to talk with Trent or I about, or potentially Carl from our team, to talk about your business and where you're at right now, and just confirm that it would be a good match, and then talk about what it would take for you to be there. So the first one's October 20th and 21st in Salt Lake City. All three of these are in Salt Lake City because it's real close to the airport. It'll be real easy for you guys to fly in if you're not in the area. The next one is in November 10th and 11th, and then December 8th and 9th. So yeah, those are earlier in the month, so they wouldn't conflict with holidays, hopefully for you guys, and would make you available. So the way that works again, and the reason we call it 2 days to fix your funnel is because we're actually going to drill down into your business. We look at every business at like a funnel, so to speak, or a series of processes connected together. And we're going to be looking at what is going to fix your funnel to release some latent profit that's trapped in there, and then get you not only aware of what that thing is and focused on the right thing in your business, but also focusing in on helping you to learn this process front and back so that you'll feel confident going home that not only are you on the right track currently, but in the future, as you reduce and eliminate that limitation, and it's time for you to do this evaluation again, you're going to be able to do it with confidence. You're going to know how to go through that process.